Hi, this is Carol Baskin. Welcome to Cat Chat. Today's issue or episode, we'll be talking with Mitchell Kalmanson of Lester Kalmanson Agency. And I think you will find him very interesting because he insures some of the most dangerous activities and animals in the world. So we have him on the line today. And welcome. Thank you for joining us, Mitchell. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Oh, great. Thank you for having me. Mitchell Kalmanson, out of Maitland, Florida, with Lester Kalmanson Agency. I am the principal and president. I've been insuring exotic animals for 25 plus years. I have started with animals. I own some animals, and I get sent around the world to help mitigate claims and underwrite risks for people all over the world, both on the commercial aspect as well as personal issues with exotic animals and domestic animals.
And how long have you been doing this?
Oh, 25, 30 years. I think I've been licensed for about 27 years now. Got out of college early and got my license, insurance licenses. I'm licensed in about 43 states, and I do get to travel all over the world looking at different facilities, animal facilities primarily. And so it's been a long road, but quite interesting. I love it every minute, very passionate, and it's a lot of fun coming to work in the mornings and finding out what's new to get involved with.
Did you start with a typical type of insurance company? How did you get involved with the more dangerous and wild and wacky, I think as it says on your...
Weird, wild, and wacky. Actually, no, I started out pretty quickly right in the niche-oriented. I was very fortunate to get involved with some of the zoological institutions almost 30 years ago, some of the professional entertainers that were out there, as well as I got hooked up with Lloyd's of London, or certain underwriters at Lloyd's in London, pretty much from the start because of my expertise. I actually grew up in the Orlando area. My parents had a little farm, and I got started with all sorts of, I call them farm and domestic animals, your horses, goats, pigs, sheep, that kind of stuff. And my mom bought me a monkey, right or wrong, when I was a kid, and I had him for 16 years.
Wow. What kind of monkey?
Having said that, I did get started with both domestic and exotic animals, and as a result of that, when I got out of college and got my licenses together, I specialized in exotic animals primarily, as well as, as I say, dogs, meaning some of the more vicious dogs.
And would this be like after a dog has bitten someone?
Well, if we talk about dogs, I write both a commercial animal owner's liability and a individual canine animal owner's liability. I'll write, when I say write, I will insure and place insurance and write the policy for a dog that's on maybe another insurance company's, quote, prohibited list. Maybe it's on a, quote, do not insure list of certain carriers, or an animal, like you said, indicated, that has previously bit somebody, that has either propensity to bite, maybe because it's a dangerous dog, or the animal was just frankly scared and hurt somebody, or damaged somebody, or caused somebody like to fall off a bicycle, or let's say the classic post office or the mailman. But a lot of times these animals aren't aggressive, they're just protecting their family. But we will insure that. Yes, we will insure somebody that's got a prior bite history, an animal. We will insure somebody that's on the list. We will insure a lot of these dogs that are commercial, maybe a bed bug dog that detects termites, or maybe a security dog, or a police dog, or a bomb detection dog, or a narcotics dog.
You said bed bug dogs?
Yeah, they actually sell them. We do where we offer the liability and the mortality coverage on them. They're very special trained dogs, usually beagles, not always. They're very, very keen of sense, and they actually can go into a house or a apartment or a hotel and find bed bugs that we can't see, that aren't normal to the naked eye, without determination, and they will determine that there are bed bugs there, and then clean it up, condemn it, throw it away, and sanitize the area. But they're actually bed bug dogs.
Wow, I've never heard of that before.
Sorry?
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's a specialized dog. They're cute little guys. They take them in normally on a leash so they don't get into areas of your house that you may not want to. But if you feel that you've got a problem, they'll come in, and then of course the termites will do their work. The terminators will do their work, or insecticides. But
That is amazing. And I'm assuming the same is true for the termites?
Same is true with the termites. They actually can sense them in the walls and in the subterranean. They can smell them out through their senses. And then normally if they have a hit, when I say a hit, when they detect that those animals, the termites and the bed bugs are there, they will normally scratch or point to the area, and then the people will, dig deeper into the wall or take a sample to see if the termites are there, and then they'll go in and clean it up.
That's really amazing. You know, some of the other things that I saw that you insured that I just never would have thought of, of as an industry were bees and algae.
Algae. Well, we'll talk about bees. The problem they're having with bees, well, you've got an investment. Obviously, honey is very in demand. The bees make the honey. You buy hives, or you start your collection of your hives and your bees, and you set them out in different areas. And we used to have a lot more, as we're all aware here in Florida, prior to the freezes back in the 70s. So there you've got anywhere from $20,000 to $1 million plus invested in bees. And lately they've been having some comb deaths, or where the whole hive dies. So therefore we've been insuring beehives for the owners as well as out west in case they lose their production of honey from the bees. So we actually insure the bees under what's called a bee mortality, and it's a life insurance on the bees like we would insure human life, but we insure the animals and specialize in a lot of the insects and the exotics. We've been working on a case now with a gentleman that breeds and sells worms and crickets, and the same thing happened. They're having a disease that wipes out the crickets, and so they're trying to go to a different subspecies of cricket that's a little hardier, and so the guy doesn't get wiped out.
Wow.
So they'll insure the mortality of those animals, or bees and crickets.
That is absolutely amazing. And I've heard an awful lot of people talking about the serious peril that bees are in. I imagine you learn an awful lot from the, for you to insure something like that, you've got to really make yourself aware of what's going on with these issues so that you know if you're taking a good risk.
Well, absolutely. I am a risk manager by discipline and formal education, but we have to know really technically more than the insurance do, because if not, we can't properly insure it. I can't properly write the policy, and I've got to make sure that we do insure what is at risk and what the insured is wanting to cover against. As in the bees, they're losing the population. If we lose them, then of course everything's gone. Your plants, your vegetables, your fruits, even your wheats and germs and stuff for making bread would be gone if we didn't have bees. So it's very important. So we do want to learn about the placement of them, the species of bees, the number of bees, the contamination, what causes the peril of disease or viruses that can get into these. Is there anything that we can do to mitigate or lessen the risk? When I say we collectively, as a risk manager, what we do is usually identify the risk, what we can do to mitigate it or lessen it, and then we manage it. We try to put some safeguards in there and say, hey, we'll help you, but these are things you've got to do as an insured to try to help yourself prevent this from happening again. I.e., if you get a contamination, you want to make darn sure that the place gets sanitized before you bring more animals in, because you don't want to bring more crickets in that get infected. I'm sorry. Oh, and so therefore you want to make sure that it's sanitized, your boxes are ready, you've got the proper sizes. Also with the bees, as a side note, they get attacked, it's funny, but it's true, they get attacked by bears all the time. The bears go in and eat the darn hive. And you also have, obviously, your natural perils or natural causes of loss that I refer to as the wind, the windstorm, the hurricane, the tornado that can wipe out the bees and damage the hives or collapse. So all those things have got to be looked at when we insure some of these unusual risks.
Have you seen an issue with the Africanized bees disrupting the honeybee production?
Well, you do have the disruption of a contamination of like the African, I think they were the African killer bees that come in, but it's more of an issue of the comb disease that affects the hive rather than being attacked by a different subspecies.
Oh, okay.
In other words, we're more concerned of your hives being wiped out because of disease or bacteria than we are being attacked by a different subspecies of bees that are coming in, like the African bees. It does happen, don't get me wrong, and I think some have come up out of Mexico that have been imported there over the years, and they come through in swarms, but it's not as likely as it would to be wiped out from disease or bacteria, or in our case here in Florida, with a hurricane or tornado issue. The other thing you mentioned is algae or algae. I got involved with some algae farms. They're making, obviously, for biofuels, which is obviously very important. And biofuels, one of the big suppliers is algae or algae, and it can grow literally anywhere in the world. Just some rough ideas or numbers or anecdotals is it takes about 100 gallons per year they can get off of an acre. The algae can grow about every 72 hours. They're called king algae. It's a subspecies of algae, no different we have in our water. Looks a little weird, and people think, oh, wow, you don't clean your waters, but really, algae is a very clean, that means you got clean water if algae is growing.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to see.
Algae bloom is a little different, but it's clean water. Look at our river streams and riverbeds. They've got algae, just like our rivers and freshwater springs here usually have algae on the bottom, a little slippery. And what they do is they actually take some of the older farms and build these 1 acre enclosures and allow the algae to grow. They pull it out every 72 hours. Then what they do is dry it, and then they have these special technical, what's called refineries, that they take the algae in and squeeze the molecules of biofuel out of the algae, and that makes the biodiesels. And then all the leftovers are given as primarily as either fertilizer or cattle food. So it's all biodegradable and used over and over again.
Wow.
So what I've done is actually put together an insurance policy to insure the algae in case it's affected by primarily a disease or bacteria that kills your algae off at your farm.
Are there temperature issues with this as well?
Of course there are. You've got the water's too shallow, the water's too deep, depending on where, let's say we're doing it over in the Middle East, or we're doing it here in Florida, when I say we, the farmers, or it's out, up in the Dakotas or something in the summer months only. But if we get into the dead of the winter, of course it'll freeze it and you can't get production. So you've got weather elements, you've got your hurricanes. The other problem that we've run into is saltwater intrusion. You've got saltwater algae and freshwater. Freshwater primarily is for the biofuels primarily, but if you get a saltwater intrusion, it will kill the algae. So you actually have to clean your enclosure, your pool out, drain it, and start over after you sanitize it and get rid of all the salt because the salinity's too high.
Would this intrusion come from rainwater, or would it come from, like, a tidal wave?
Well, you get a tidal wave, but really your salt water would be, let's just as an example, take the lake in New Orleans where we had the dam break and all of a sudden the sea comes up over, or Sandy that hit in New Jersey, you get the salt water that just comes up into the pastures or into the farms, or you get a levee break, or you get a groundwater that had that brackish water, or a well that came up that had brackish water, sulfur water, or seawater under it because it's too shallow of a well and it's too close to the coastline.
That makes sense.
In reverse, if you're using salt water and you get a freshwater intrusion, we run into that a lot with marine mammals.
Do you insure marine mammals?
We do. The mantos, the dolphins, the whales, the killer whales, the false killer whales, a lot of the aquarium fish, and you've got a really nice saltwater aquarium, but you get a freshwater intrusion from rain. Let's say, and I had a facility in one of the islands of the Caribbean that was getting a lot of rain on the island because it was, quote, a rainforest, but it was draining into the saltwater area where the marine mammals were. Well, they were getting too much, they call it sweet water, meaning it's too high concentration of fresh water in that saltwater lagoon. So the fresh water was taking over and diminishing the saltwater. So we had to figure out a way to divert the rainwater, just like we would do on a roof, so that the animals have the proper salinity and pH level of salt versus fresh water.
Man. Yeah, it sounds like from some of these places that you're mentioning, you're insuring animals and unusual circumstances all around the world. Is that correct?
That is correct. I have I brag a little bit, but I've been in over 135 countries. The underwriters, primarily Lloyd's and some of these other big insurance and reinsurance carriers, send me all over the world to look at life support systems of animals, both the marine mammals, cattle farms, pig farms, zoological institutions. There's a lot of zoological animals that move around the world for different breeding and displayed exhibits at the zoos that need different species. So I get involved on the transit, involved on the sedation with these animals, the shipping containerizations, as well as what kind of facility they're coming out of and what kind of facility they're going into. If it's a captive-born animal or a wild-caught animal, and look at all the different, I call them SOPs, standard operating procedures, to make sure that we can identify the risk and then mitigate it and make sure that at all costs the welfare of the animal is never compromised.
You know, there's been a couple of times where I've needed to call on you when we were transporting an animal, and I've got to say, your transport wagons, the actual beast wagon that carries the animal, are the most thought out, well-designed transport machines that I have ever seen. And I'm guessing it's from your years of experience with what has and hasn't worked.
Oh, exactly, and thank you. I look at any aspect of that animal getting hurt, caught, stuck. I call it the what if. What if this happens? What if that happens? And I try to mitigate at every cost that the welfare of that animal is never compromised. The animal's got plenty of room, whether it's got to sit there for literally an hour or a day or a week. I'll give you an instance. We had some bonobos coming in. Bonobos are miniature chimpanzees, and they are one of the 5 great apes, which a lot of people don't realize. They were coming in when 9/11 hit, and they ended up being rerouted to Canada, up in north of the U.S., obviously, and had to be put into a auditorium, a school auditorium, because nobody knew what was happening with 9/11. Having said that, we want to make sure that our cages are for long term. Those animals could technically live in there a month if they had to, as long as we've got a place for the urine and feces to drain, and a place to give them fresh water, and a way to feed and clean it out. And so, yeah, it's taken years to get there, but we try to think of everything so when these animals are picked up or moved or transferred or even held for medical purposes, we don't have to compromise welfare again.
Well, it really shows in the designs that you've incorporated. They have been just amazing to me. It's like there's nothing I could not look at any of your transport wagons and say I would do anything different, because I've never run into anything that wasn't already covered in the thought that you had put into those.
It's the only concern, it's just a retort, but I just never have enough of them.
Yeah, I can understand that. People are always asking me, can we borrow your wagon? And it's like, there's just no, I guess there's not a big enough market for them for people to mass produce them. And when
there really isn't. It's just such a specialized field. It's really esoteric. So I've got them for my own use. Yes, I lend them out on occasion. And a lot of people, animals get confiscated or hurt or need to be transported for one reason or another. So I always try to keep 1 or 2 extras on hand so that if they have to go out, I can still take care of the animals that are local. Or if I get a phone call and says, hey, we've got an abandoned animal or an animal that's been hurt or injured or abused, I can say, great, let me come get it, and always have an extra cage ready to, go get the animal to do whatever we can to try to help that animal.
And I know there's been cases where animals have been confiscated that you've actually given them a permanent home, and you're on 200 acres, I believe?
I am on 200 acres. I'm north of Orlando, and yes, I have taken in, as yourself, many of the animals that have been mistreated, abused, hurt, probably not in the right hands. Somebody saw a darn movie and says, hey, we want a baby, and all of a sudden baby grows up, and now what do we do with it? Or it's hurt somebody. And we do. I don't like really acquiring a lot of different people's problems, but as you know, we take these animals in, we do everything the best we can, we give as much medical care and feed as we can and hope for the best, and sometimes it works out, they live, nice, longer life, and sometimes we end up losing them. It's just part of the game, I guess, that they weren't meant to live for whatever reason, but we sure give it a try to prolong their lives.
Yeah, I certainly know what that's like, because by the time an animal ends up in need of rescue, there are usually multiple health issues involved and years of neglect behind it, and so it can be a real challenge to give them some dignity in their last months or years.
Absolutely. I mean, we could both go on for days and hours on reasons and analogies, but it happens. I had a lion recently, and long story short, he had an eye problem, is all I can say. He's blind in one eye, but he doesn't read the funny comics on Sunday, so I'm not worried about it. But we made sure there was no infection and no drainage and all that good stuff. But it happens. It was funny, but he's now healthy. He's put on maybe 200, 250 pounds.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, he's just adopted a new home, and he'll stay there until he dies of natural causes, 5, 10, 15 years from now.
And from what I understand, you do this completely on your own dime. You don't operate it as a nonprofit looking for donations. You just say, when I take this animal in, I'm just going to take care of it on my own until the animal passes.
It's a natural cause. That is correct. It's a passion. It's a hobby. I enjoy it. I really enjoy being around the animals, and it's fun. And I get a lot of, as we all do, but I get a lot of weird phone calls and different animals that probably shouldn't be where they are, but they are, and it's not the animal's fault, so we just have to take it and go forward.
Yeah.
Some animals I'd love to bring in, but I can't. I just don't have the facilities for, like, dolphins and whales and that kind of stuff.
We have a lake here.
There you go. It's a big swimming pool. But it's interesting. But again, always looking at the element of risk, and of course with the insurance issue, back on the insurance, is that there is a risk factor of people owning these animals. There is exposure to the public with these animals, whether it's private or commercial. So there's always that element of we need insurance, or we should have insurance.
You provide the insurance here for Big Cat Rescue. We were with, I think, TIG before you, and they decided that places like ours, not because we had had any claims, but just because we're not huge AZA zoos, that places like ours were too risky. So we're very thankful that you were willing to take those major risks. I suspect there's a lot of people that ended up in that same boat that had insurance for years, and then when that came through, all of a sudden were calling around, because I know they were all calling me and going, where do you get insurance? And so I was always sending them to you.
Oh, well, thank you. And to complement that, I mean, we've had a long relationship and have zero problems, but a lot of people will buy insurance. They think they get it cheaper or a better deal, but they really don't have coverage. Case in point, just ran into it literally yesterday afternoon, went to a carrier in South Florida, bought insurance, found out they had no coverage, and this is what you've got to pay attention to, but they had no coverage for bodily injury or property damage caused by their animals. And they have class 1 felidae, the lion, the tigers. They also have venomous and non-venomous reptiles, i.e. snakes, and they thought they had coverage, and when somebody came upon, there was exclusion for those animals. So they bought a cheap policy, but it didn't cover anything. So you've got to pay attention to what you're buying and make sure that the wording covers the animal activities of whatever you're doing, whether it's a personal pet, commercial activity, sanctuary, medical field, maybe it's for a display exhibit, maybe it's a zoo, open to the public, closed to the public, private facility, but you've got to make darn sure that you've got the proper limits and you have coverage rather than some hidden exclusion that won't cover you if something happens.
I think that's so important, because I read contracts all the time because I'm in real estate and I have to read contracts. But there is nothing harder to understand than an insurance policy. And I can imagine that most people, even if they tried to read their insurance policy, would have no idea what they were covered for. And we had talked a little bit earlier where you said that you provide expert witness testimony in cases. I'm wondering, I'd like to hear more about that. And I wonder if you offer any kind of a review service where you could charge somebody to say, let me look at your policy and I'll tell you what you're really covered for or not.
Well, absolutely. Let me try to go through that one at a time more succinctly, if I may. I do a lot of consulting. I'd be happy to look over, as I say, anybody's shoulder either purchasing insurance or has insurance or says, hey, what about this? Am I covered? Am I not covered? Am I properly covered? There's two basic policies in the United States of insurance, and I'm talking right now of liability or general liability of the animals. What we offer is a manuscript policy form. The other form that I mentioned is called an ISO, or Insurance Service Office form. It's a standard wording that's taken off a shelf, added to a policy, and these brokers and agents, right, wrong, or indifferently, just sell it, and the company issues it on an ISO form. It is not geared for the animal operations and activities, and that's all animals, whether it's the dog, the lion, tiger, elephant, etc., regardless of what kind of hands it's in. The manuscript, and it's very rare to find, and I am one of the few in the country, and I can honestly take credit, that can manuscript a policy with wording that is very specific to the animal activities that are going on to be insured, i.e., again, open to the public, closed to the public, private, commercial, profit, not profit, etc., whether animals stay on premises or taken off or transported. Having said that, you've got to make sure, and I'd be happy to help and consult, as I say, look over the shoulder of either the insured or the person that owns the animal and buying the coverage, and or has coverage and wants to know, hey, am I properly covered? And look to see, is there any endorsements or exclusions that says, hey, you don't have the coverage you think you do, or yes, you do, and we can make some changes. Again, here's some mitigation factors. Here's some insurance language. Here's some insurance tools that we can add in to make sure you're covered, the landlord's covered, the venue's covered, the homeowner's covered, whatever the circumstances, the farm's covered, or the entity. Maybe it's a city zoo or a county zoo, etc. Maybe it's a breeding farm or an operation. And I'm not taking sides of what people do with the animals, just from an insurance standpoint. So yes, we can do that. And those are the two forms, a manuscript form and an ISO form, which is a standard form. Some companies have their own, but as I mentioned yesterday, as the example I used from yesterday, they had an insurance policy, it didn't cover the animals, and it defeated the purpose of these people buying coverage. So we're working on trying to get that cleaned up for the people so that they have proper coverage for what they do. Expert witness or expert work is court work. I've done a lot of court work over the years, helping attorneys navigate insurance policies on both sides. I will advocate the system. I never take one side versus the other. What I mean by that, like the defendant. But what I'm used for, and that's what I do, an expert, is working with the attorneys or the judges and saying, okay, judge, these people had proper coverage, they didn't. Here's an insurance company where you can get your money or defense coverage for somebody that got hurt or something that got damaged. And looking at, again, the insurance vehicles, looking at what happened. I don't get involved with the medicals. That's up to the physicians and the emergency rooms and all the docs that take care of the problems. Or maybe it's a physical damage issue where, I just use an example, an elephant ran into a car, or a car ran into an elephant, and the animal's okay, but who's responsible? So let's look to see what insurance should cover it, did cover it, or didn't, and where their coverage may lie to help them in case of an incident. Or, as you know, have worked with, some of these states are coming up with laws and promulgating rules to mandate that people with, quote, venomous reptiles, people with exotic animals, carry certain insurances to make sure that the city, state, and government have the correct language in the statute so that it's available and it's the correct language protecting I call it the general public, protecting the city, the county, the state, the municipality, that they have the proper coverage, adding on the additional insured statuses when needed, and the other insurance mechanisms, so that when you have an animal, whether you're a grandfather or you're buying an animal or you're starting a facility for whatever reason, you have the proper insurance, as well as if it goes to court, from an expert witness standpoint, yes, you bought it, no, you didn't, and why you did or didn't buy the proper coverage.
It sounds like Yeah, and it sounds like it's really important that people understand that even if they have insurance, they are the ones that are really responsible for making sure that they have the right kind of coverage and that they really can indemnify somebody, or not indemnify, but reimburse somebody if they do have an injury, or if there is an animal escape or any of those kinds of things. Something you had mentioned to me earlier that I hadn't really thought about was this case recently where this woman was an employee at a park and she was bitten by a tiger. And so you're not the insurer there, but you were telling me that that would not even be something that would be covered by insurance. That would be a workers' comp issue. And I think probably an awful lot of people that run sanctuaries are not doing some of the things that they should be doing, such as having workers' comp, and might think that just because they have a $10,000 policy with you, that's going to cover them for this $1 million worth of damage when somebody gets hurt.
Well, absolutely. And again, yes, it is your responsibility. Obviously, you have a responsibility, as I say, to the general public, neighbors, etc., by owning these animals. They're inherently dangerous. We've got a lot of safeguards and minimum standards, but we exceed them at all angles, or should, to protect these animals from getting hurt, as well as from those animals getting out and hurting somebody else. And again, back to risk management, what do we do to mitigate? As the example of the one that you mentioned that was out west, those cages probably should have been built differently. That lady or girl, and I don't know the age, I think she was adult, majority age, should not have been there. But if she was either a patron or an employee, and I understand she was more on the employee status, should not have been allowed to get that close to that animal. And then to make sure you're correct, do they have the proper liability? Do they carry workers' comp and employer's liability for their staff? And what kind of safety protocols they put their staff through to make sure that these things are mitigated? And do they have the right class code, if it is under a workers' comp policy, to cover, quote, a zoological institution or a animal sanctuary, whether it performs open to the public again or private, etc. What kind of animals are housing? So that the individual, she's hurt, I'm sure she's going to be scarred for life and possibly maimed. I don't know the details of the medicals, but is there money to help her put her life back together, both from a living aspect to a disability aspect, as well as the medicals that could be, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on how severe that lady was hurt.
We have workers' comp here at the sanctuary. And even though we have workers' comp and we have to pay much higher rates because we actually have, disclosed the kinds of things that people can get harmed hereby, I think when probably a lot of these substandard places are shopping for insurance, or if they have to, feel like they have to purchase workers' comp because of the state laws, they may not be disclosing some of the pitfalls, plus they may not be educating their staff on safety protocols. I know we have to have, every week we have a staff meeting and we always have to go over safety issues to make sure that we're in compliance with those workers' comp laws. So I think you probably know better than I do what kinds of things people need to be doing.
Well, yeah, it's called the Available Practices Rule, or that's what I call it, is to have the protocols, have the standard operating procedures, as you said, having daily, weekly, monthly, whatever the meetings are, but to make sure that staff is aware of it, to make sure that these people, the facility one is properly classified, and the people are identified as either a volunteer, identified as an employee, or just a guest, if you would, or, quote, an owner. Making sure that if they have safety protocols, safety procedures, that people are aware of it, they follow them. If something gets broken or an animal breaks something or gets through something, then it's fixed immediately so that the animal's not compromised, welfare's not compromised, and then, of course, the welfare of the public isn't exposed where an animal's going to get out or they can get into something, a human gets into something they shouldn't be allowed to get into. The heights, the way the trees are trimmed, the way that the cages are secured to the ground, they're secured to each other, how they're tied off, whether they've got one tension strap or 5 or 6 to a pole, whatever the issue is, depending on how one construct a facility. As an example, look at, and I'm swaying out a little bit, but look at the facility last year where the guy let the animals out, and they had to euthanize those animals because there was not a proper perimeter fence there. There should have been, that they could have at least contained those animals, and then the law enforcement could have probably done a lot more to mitigate the problem rather than worry about animals at large. Or the one that we just talked about, this girl that got hurt out west, what could we have done to try to prevent her from doing it? But if she did we have the right insurance? Or did we notify something, we, the employees or volunteers of the facility, and we did or didn't bring it to management and said, hey, you've got a problem with cage 12, why was it not fixed? Or if it needs to be fixed, and put it on the fixed list, and within whatever day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, order the parts and get it fixed, rather than saying, oh, well, she got hurt because there was an accident waiting to happen. We knew it was going to happen, but nobody ever fixed it. So it's very, very important that the protocols are there, written protocols are followed, and like you said, having daily, weekly, or monthly meetings to make sure that everybody is still keen on what's going on over and over so they don't get complacent.
You said something very important there, which is that these things need to be documented in writing, and whether it's an insurance claim or it's an issue with USDA, because they're going to get involved anytime somebody gets injured or killed or an animal escapes if it's from a USDA licensed facility. What they're going to want to see is, what did you do to try and prevent this? And you better be able to document what you did to try and prevent it.
Documentation is absolutely, it's so darn important. Pictures, and it doesn't have to be a form. I mean, everybody's got smartphones nowadays. Take pictures, send an email. Carol, cat water X is broken, replace it. Okay, tomorrow it's replaced, send an email to everybody. Hey, it's been done, taken care of, on to the next thing. I'm just using that as an example, obviously. The safety protocols, making sure these people don't have loose clothing, they've got proper shoes on, maybe a helmet or a hat if necessary. What I mean is a hard hat. They don't go sticking toes and fingers and jackets into places, or getting it stuck because they're too small or too large of holes or enclosures. The list is endless, obviously, and I do write and have written literally risk management manuals for these. But it's just, you've got to document, send the memos, keep it, and you're absolutely right. In Florida, we have FWC, which is Florida Wildlife Commission. USDA will be there. Look at the gentleman, he was 30, 40 years senior up in Missouri last week, that got killed by the elephant.
Yes, 30 years experience with that.
Yeah, and it's just pure speculation, but I think 3 or 4 days earlier they had to euthanize an animal for medical reasons. I think there was some kidney problems, and it's possible that this animal was still mourning, didn't want to move. The gentleman went to move her, and the animal just squeezed him. And again, you're dealing with a 6,000 to 10,000 pound animal. It probably wasn't either one's fault, but he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But again, documenting, making sure you've got a facility to move these animals, i.e. transport cages or chutes, or a way to move them from enclosure A to enclosure B, so that these animals can move safely and without any strain or problems. The welfare of the public or the employees or the volunteers are not at risk, as well as the animal isn't at risk of getting cut just because he moved from point A to B, as an example.
What do you do at your own facility? Do you and your very beautiful partner, Renee, do you do all of the animal care, or do you have staff that you have to train to take care of these animals?
Well, I've got some volunteers that help as far as taking care of them, as far as the cleaning and feeding. There's very few of us, for certain reasons, that are actually licensed, and we don't allow the staff. I have staff that helps me build the enclosures to my specs, and I look at everything before the concrete's poured, before an animal's let in there, and make sure every damn screw is tight or loose or whatever we're dealing with. But we don't allow a lot of people in with the animals for safety reasons. And we also have I used to use key locks, I now use combos, which is just a personal preference for certain reasons. But very, very less than a handful of people have access to these animals on a day-to-day basis. So yes, they help me put the facility together, remove the cleaning or the feces, the dirt, etc., but I don't allow near the animals. So it's very controlled, and we do most of vet clinic on staff or a surgical table, and we do almost everything on site. Luckily, my girlfriend was at the University of Florida for 5 years getting her degree, and so there's very little we can't do on site unless we need some technical stuff, and we'll go to a clinic or up to to Gainesville. But the animals are just really hands off to most people, except for the domesticated animals, obviously.
And you do have a lot of hoof stock and those kinds of animals.
I've got hoof stock, and I also have, I don't know if we've talked, but I also have, right now I've got 3, but of the domesticated foxes, which is another project to itself, but from Russia. And they actually domesticated a species in literally our lifetime, which is really fascinating. And I can honestly say these animals are tame and trained rather than trained and not tamed. They are domesticated 100%. So they're just like your dog and cat.
I saw that on your website, and I have a show notes page where I have all the pictures that Renee sent me that we'll talk about here in a few minutes.
Okay.
But I started to put the picture of you and Renee holding these foxes, and I thought, I'm just not going to do that because people looking at that might think that I'm promoting handling exotic animals, which I don't promote anybody touching wild animals. But when it said domesticated foxes, I wondered what the story was behind that because I've not heard that term before.
Well, we got a limited time, but I'll try to be as cliff noted as I can. The Russian Institute, back under the communist rule, PhD back in the 50s, 40s or 50s, late 40s, early 50s, started seeing some behavioral differences at a commercial farm, fur farm. Unbeknownst to the communist government, he started doing research and breeding of these animals that were showing the propensities of being like a dog, just like our own dogs at home. And now 55, 56, or 60 years later, they actually have domesticated foxes that have been bred and morphed. There are Vulpes, which is a red fox. They've actually morphed them to different colors, the grays, platinums, blacks or gray-black, and reds, of course, that are domesticated, and they actually have them living in people's houses. We keep some outside. I've got people that have them inside. We do bring them over for people. They only allow about 18 or 20 a year to be released from Russia. They have to be sterilized. They have to have the proper permits and license and facility to own them, but most people we've got are keeping them in their house like their dogs. They, what you call potty or litter train very quickly. Funny enough, they also, one gentleman took him 18 years to get his PhD degree in cytology and genealogy, but he actually took the same thing that they did with the foxes and domesticated the mink.
Well, that's got to be hard. Mink are really vicious.
Well, they can be, and actually I have the first one at home out of Russia. But we call him, his name is Harvey, and he just wants to play, loves water, a lot different than a ferret, a lot different than a weasel, but the same family. But yeah, they normally they're very nasty, or could be. And like the foxes are just more territorial, and they wander and eat anything, but their teeth strength isn't very strong. They just have very sharp teeth that tear meat, but they actually have domesticated the fox, so it's a different animal as opposed to your farm-raised animals or the animals you capture in the backyard and say it's domesticated.
Well, that's interesting. You also told me some interesting stuff about a giant pouched rat. Tell us about what you're doing with those.
I was called, about this time last year and asked by one of the universities if I could help move some animals that they weren't able to move. And so we went over there, we did a recon trip, we started to go, we got some very insecure plastic cages that had come in from one of the hospitals or institutes that had just closed by the government up in, I think it's in Bethesda. And they sent them to me, and I said, these aren't going to work, but we're going to go through the motions. Long story short, I aborted the trip, came back to the U.S., I fabricated these cages, as I do everything else, went back and moved them. These things are anywhere from 3 to 6 pounds. They're huge. They look like the old movie Willard up in big screen. And they're called pouch rats because they eat so much they pouch up like a gerbil or a hamster in their cheeks, and then they regurgitate on it and eat it for a while. But what's interesting about them, they come from Africa. fascinating is that this gentleman did his PhD years ago over in Europe, and he's actually got these animals trained to detect pulmonary tuberculosis, salmonella, and that's pulmonary as in blood, and they can detect TNT up to 3 feet in the ground for landmines. And so they train these animals to mark on landmines. What's really interesting is, one, they're so little in weight, unlike our dogs, our bomb detection dogs of the Army and the military and police, is that if they got on top of a detonation mine, they're not enough weight to detonate. They won't kill themselves, unlike the dog, unfortunately.
Now, when
and
you
they
say
can scratch and find these things, and then, of course, the team will come in and take the mine out of a certain area.
when you say they mark the mine, is that mark like a cat pees on things, or marks like a dog points on things?
A point something, they'll scratch the ground that there's a mine there, and then the team will come in, pull the animal away, and they'll find it. They use like a metal detector, and then they'll circle it and take it, take it away, and then disengage it. It's really fascinating. It's very rural happening out in Tanzania, where we were at one of the universities there. They start them off on like a piece of bamboo on a rope. It's a food reward system, and these damn animals are just amazing to watch detect this stuff. Same with the pulmonary tuberculosis. They can do it. They can smell the blood literally within microseconds or nanoseconds, where we have to have our blood taken in the lab, spun, and tested. These animals could do a whole, let's say, corporate office in a matter of minutes, where it would take a lot longer for our medical institutions to do it. And so the institution that I brought him to here in the United States, I was told to bring 50 animals back, and I had 50 arrive live and are now in the university being taught and working on all their veterinarian protocols. And there's some more over there they'd like to bring back because they're working on it. They can be trained very fast. They can live 8, 9, 10, 11 years, so they live a lot longer than the normal little rats. They calm down or habituate very fast. They're pretty easy keepers, fruits, vegetables, that kind of stuff.
I understand that rats are just amazingly intelligent animals and can be very adaptable to humans.
Yes. The other thing, I spent some time actually at dinner with one of their behavioral professors or PhDs, and we were talking about putting a little GoPro on them. And the neat thing is that, and the dogs do a great job, don't get me wrong, but when we get the likes of what happened in Boston or 9/11 or any of these other calamities around the world, or just even a tsunami or earthquake or whatever, is that the dogs are limited to where they can get into. These darn rats will get into almost anywhere the way they can squeeze their bodies, and they're so small. And if we're able to put a GoPro on it, we could get a live feed, and we can see if anybody is stuck there, and the medical teams and evacuation teams can deal with it a lot easier than assuming there's a body or not.
Oh, how marvelous. Man. Now, we're in our last 12 minutes here, and Renee sent me so many wonderful pictures, so I'm understanding now the rat pictures go with the Tanzania stuff. What I'll have to do in post, because I've not been able to screen share. Usually I can screen share and show the pictures that somebody has sent, but it's not letting me do that. So what I'll have to do is, after this post, I'll go back and edit it and put the pictures in that you're talking about. So if you can talk about the pictures, then I'll put them in over top of where you're talking about it. But the pictures she sent me were of these giant pouched rats, which we've already talked about. There were some pictures of you guys with some tribal members, and I'm wondering if this was the same area?
No, that would I'm not quite sure. The rats, you'll also see some of the custom cages that I make and fabricate that have plenty of space and exceed all IOTA containerizations on the rats. The tribal, I'm not sure if that was the Tanzania trip or the Uganda trip where we went up to see the gorillas up in the mountains.
She did send me several beautiful images of the gorillas, so what was that about?
Well, went up to see the gorillas. I got passes to go up to see the gorillas in Uganda. It's fascinating, recommended to anybody that ever gets a chance to do it, and sooner than later, because the darn human gorillas are just getting crazy over there, and just so much political strife and problems. So if you ever get a chance to get up into the mountains and go see the gorillas in their natural environment, they are habituated. They'll take you up there. They usually only give you an hour. There's no hands-on. You just get to see them, take pictures, and you get close to these darn silverbacks and babies and all the mothers. But you get up into the mountains and you get to see these gorillas in their natural environment. It's just a chance to do that, as well as the tribal, the people, how they actually are, the people that take care of the gorillas in the village, or the villagers that actually work in and around these gorillas.
And was this the area where the crocodile images and zebra and wildebeest were?
Yeah, that would have been probably more of the Murchison Falls, which is a gorgeous area if you get to Uganda. Rwanda, and also in Rwanda Mountains, very similar, same range. But yeah, the crocodiles and all the different antelopes and the different giraffes and all the different African species. And Uganda, I recommend a lot for people because it's a good Africa 101. They speak English there and it's safe. And ever since the old days of Idi Amin and all that stuff is gone, so it's still a relatively very safe area to go and enjoy your trip, regardless of how much time you have. And it's very inexpensive compared to some of the other safari and facilities. And you'll see a really nice cross selection of the huge crocs. They're not as big as the saltwater crocs, but the Nile crocs are huge. The giraffes. And that's only one of the places in the world, the Murchison Falls, where the Rothschild giraffe comes from.
And probably some of the most stunning photos that you sent were of polar bears and I think walruses or maybe sea lions and some orcas.
We just got back from the Arctic Circle, or north of the Arctic Circle, flew a charter flight into Greenland, and then we were on the Nat Geo boat, which was all the naturalists, which is just purely amazing footage and amazing opportunities. We saw 61 polar bears on our venture up in the North Pole, and that was unheard of. We saw a couple of moms with babies. We saw some polar bears killing the seals and eating it for food source. Two of them, if they had opened the door of the boat, they would have come on board. They just got right up to the boat because you're in ice, obviously, and it was just amazing to see these animals in their natural environment. Some of these darn things were 30, 40, 50 miles away from shore, swimming or floating on ice, just hanging out.
Wow.
The walrus, I'm not sure which picture she sent, and I apologize because of the timing, but one of the walruses, we came up, the captain put us on that ice berth that she was on, and there was a little pup that couldn't have been more than a month old, just hanging out with the mom walrus.
Now, how is it that you ended up on the Nat Geo boat? What were you going there to? Were you insuring something?
Purposely to be with the naturalists, to be with their experts. They only take 141 passengers with us. Very, very small. You can make arrangements to go with them. You got to do it usually months in advance, and to see the nature and to get into the nature when they're doing their photography and their talks, and it's just an amazing environment of natural quality and just how much is out there in the earth that's unspoiled. And of course, they're doing research of the polar ice. They're doing research of these animals and what they see and what kind of ice they're on.
And you had some interesting insights from what they were telling you.
Well, one in particular is actually, yeah, that was really interesting. The polar bears are actually increasing in numbers. The polar bears are actually increasing in numbers rather than decreasing, and they're seeing more polar bears up in the Arctic area than a decrease. Whether the ice is melting or not from the polar or the global warming, there's actually talk that the global warming may be caused because there's so much oil there. The petroleum is actually causing the natural geology or organic oil is actually causing some of the melting as opposed to the global warming, and that really they're getting polar switches from north to south. I've been down in Antarctica as well, and there's some trees, I guess, down there that at one time was south that are now up in north, and some of the stuff is flip-flopping. So it's very interesting observations of the animals increasing rather than decreasing because of the polar melting or the ice melting. Not sure if she sent you, but on another little quick sidebar, we were very, very fortunate, and in fact, the captain was almost in tears out of his 30 years as a Marine master captain, but we actually got to see Norwhales and bow whales, and bow whales is what Moby Dick was.
Oh, wow. No, I didn't get a picture of that. That would have been great.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I saw the orcas. Those were beautiful.
Orcas. We saw a huge pot of orcas, and to be able to be with Nat Geo and get up in there and close with these and not disturb them, but to just watch them, and they'll play with the boat. They don't want to be bothered. They'll swim off. never compromise their welfare, but it's just amazing to see this stuff up in their natural environment. And of course, they're the only whale that sort of circumvents the globe.
Man. Well, in your last 5 minutes, tell us about you personally. I found it very hard researching you to find anything written about you or any interviews that I could find to see, what turns you on, what makes you get up every morning.
Good, bad, and ugly. Born and raised in Orlando, Florida, I should say Winter Park. My parents still live here. My parents were in business here. I got into the family business 25 years ago. Went to school over in Tampa, one of the universities there, graduated. Luckily, I traveled as a child. I travel now a lot, namely almost 99% for business. Involved with animal stuff and entertainment, literally all over the world. When I say entertainment, I get involved with insuring, obviously, the animal facilities, the swim program, as well as commercial performances and circuses and a lot of concerts and the special events, the real hard-to-place rap concerts, if you would, and some of the other, I call them weird, wild, and wacky or funky operations. I do live on a couple hundred acres. I do have animals around me almost 24/7 when I'm at home, obviously. And that's what I like to do. I like to travel. I like to see places. I like to get to where most people don't go, like Antarctica, like Arctic Circle and North Pole. We were down in Ushuaia. Ushuaia is the last, literally, piece of Earth in this world before you get to Antarctica. Learning about conversions and Arctic waters and Asia, going out into the, really, when I say into the sticks, seeing it, from the pyramids of Egypt or getting down into Mauritius or Madagascar. There's just so much nature to see out there that is just really a lot of interesting passions to explore. You have to see all the other wonders of the land, but there's so much more to see outside of the major facilities, I should say.
It sounds like you have a voracious appetite for learning about our natural world.
Well, it's always been a passion. It's always been a fun to do. I'm like a sponge. I always absorb this stuff and learn. And there's just so much to keep learning. And I like being around different people with a lot of expertises that help teach you more about it. Whether it's geology, oceanography. We've got one guy that travels on the Net Geo that's just amazing. He's an ice expert and about the ice and how. Well, back to geology. We were up in Greenland. That's the oldest place. The place in the world that has the oldest rock. They're 2.5 to 3 billion years of age. We get onto the ice. We're down in Antarctica or up the Arctic. How old that sea ice is? It's been packed with no oxygen left in it, and it's packed and it's hundreds and thousands of years old. It's amazing stuff.
There's so much we can learn from the borings that they've done through the ice packs.
Absolutely.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking an hour out of your day. I know that's got to be an awful lot of time given the number of things that you have to deal with.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much. Good to speak with you, and look forward to maybe visiting again.
Please do. And I feel the same way. I look forward to visiting with you guys again soon. Hopefully I won't be needing to borrow a cage when I'm coming, but it would be nice to visit
they're
you.
Available. Please stay in touch, and thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. That was Cat Chat 25. Thank you for joining us today. You'll find the show notes at catchatshow.com or bigcatrescue.org/catchat.